And we are a go. So, thoughts 1994's Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's the full title, but... And I made sure to start the timer. Yes, so this video contains spoilers, and it is a long video, but there are time codes for different sections in the description box. And I may make other videos on this, so I'll try not to say the same thing in more than one video. And yeah, so the ratings. My own film critic rating for this is 7 out of 10. That was what it was way back when I first wrote a review of it, and I do stand by that. But personal enjoyment, personal rating, still 10 out of 10. I really loved it. I mean, I guess it's not really necessarily a surprise for the ones that I'm going back and doing videos on that I've watched a bunch of times before, that these are films that I love, because, those are the ones that I'm most interested in doing videos on. But I've also just been very fortunate in recent, theater released movies that I absolutely love them. Now, let's see, I guess I should, yes, first, first one thing that's on topic, then a couple of off-topic things, and then we're on to the first section. I'm going to refer to Robert De Niro's character as Adam Frankenstein. Calling him Adam is from the novel. If I happen to forget that, I'll probably call him maybe the monster, the creation, the creature, short for Frankenstein's monster, Frankenstein's creation, and Frankenstein's creature. This does not mean that I consider him to be a monster, a mere creation, or a creature, or that I think he isn't very human in some ways. And as expected, I loved the DCU Film and Culture Analysis Part 4 as much as I loved the first 3 parts. I'm really going to miss seeing new episodes of that, and I'd still like to know what he thinks of Aquaman. He referred to Shazam, and he talked about all the ones that have been released except for Aquaman. And again, I figure he probably had all that stuff prepared. I forgot. Excuse me. I had completely forgotten about that part of the lighting setup. Right. I figure he probably had a lot of this stuff prepared. It's very clearly, he put a lot of time into this, so he probably completed most of the stuff before Aquaman came out. So, but now that he's said that he thinks Shazam looks like fun, and he's talked about all the ones that have been released except for Aquaman, even if he absolutely hates it, and again, I love it, I would still really like to know what he thinks. Maybe just like a vlog or something. Just, yeah. I don't know. It's possible he's done it via like tweet or something. I only watched his videos, so. Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just quoted Rorschach from Watchmen, warning other Democrats, "You don't understand, I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me." The more this woman says and does, the more awesome she shows herself to be. It's unreal. And I do have to admit, when she, it starts with, to quote Alan Moore or something like that, and I didn't realize right away that she was going to be quoting his works. I thought she would be quoting the awesome snark that is when that man expresses something outside of his writing, like commenting on others. That's awesome. Maybe she will at some point, but just briefly, he, if I recall, I think it's 300, the movie, that he said, "I didn't watch the movie, but from what I hear, it goes further in the direction that the book already went. And he lists a couple of the, it's a really problematic movie. And then he says, when he says that, when he has a Spartan say of an Athenian, "Oh, those boy lovers." I mean, come on, read a book, Frank. Just such a shutdown. And he said, like Zack Snyder once said of his Watchmen movie, the adaptation, that maybe at some point Alan will put on the DVD and he'll be like, that's not so bad or something. And then Moore was, "I'm never going to watch this effing thing." It just, that's, I absolutely love. I mean, Alan Moore's just brutal verbal takedowns of people who've said or done something really stupid are as, just searing as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So, it's possible that she will directly quote the man himself at some point. Now, starting talking about the actual movie here. Notes taken while watching. And I guess I should just briefly say, for people who aren't, who haven't watched a lot of these videos of mine, there are going to be things that I'm only going to briefly touch upon here, or that I do think are compelling, but that I have made notes on in some of the other sections. So if I, go between two different things in the movie, and seeming to skip something important, it's very possible that I go into it in another section. Just briefly on process. I spend a week, 2 weeks leading up to doing one of these videos, trying to take as many notes and do as much research as I can on what I'm reviewing, and so a bunch of stuff. When it's something like this, where I've watched it a bunch of times before, if I can remember something, it doesn't go into this section, it goes into the next section, notes taken before watching. And then if I want to comment on something that was written on IMDb, that's going to be in the third section. But this is specifically what I noted as I was watching it this time. Now, I forget, it's been a couple of years since the last time I watched it before this, and I watched it a ton of times back in the early 2000s, late 90s, something like that, yeah. Me and a friend of mine absolutely loved this movie. Now, but yes, to get to the actual notes taken while watching. The movie hits the ground running immediately. Immediately after the brief text scroll, it's the ship in a horrible storm. It's like immediately. I mean, I guess I get why some people think the movie's just overpowering. It's too big. But I think that it goes right up against the line and doesn't quite cross it. And I love the fact that it goes right up against the line. I think there are a lot of movies that I enjoy a lot that I wish would go a lot further, would get a lot bigger. I just feel like, I guess, okay, let's say that you watch a movie every single day. Let's say you watch more than one movie in a day. Then I get how this might feel overpowering. But I mean, it was originally released in theaters. When you go to watch a movie in theaters, it wasn't always the case, but certainly in 1994, that's the movie you watch. You don't sit down and watch like 2 or 3 movies in a row. Then it might be overpowering. But yeah, as it is, it's not. There are definitely movies that I think push things too far, but I just don't. I think this pushes it exactly as it should. You know, I mean, there are movies that are 3 hours long that never get as intense and just like, is scary the right word? Harrowing and yeah, I guess terrifying, powerful, as this movie is in the first couple of minutes with the ship. You know, I've seen movies that are about people on a ship, and there are scenes where they're in danger, and it's not as intense as this scene of a ship in danger. It's, yeah. And, you know, about 3 minutes into the movie, one of the sailors drowns in ice water. You know, it's one of the worst ways to die. You know, your body, you just, you know, your muscles cramp up because the human body is not made to withstand such cold. So it's not, you know, it's one thing to drown far out at sea. Maybe you can't swim, or maybe you're, you know, yeah, there are different circumstances there. But to just within so few seconds go from being completely or mostly safe, you know, not touching the water, and then touching the water, and then just going under and drowning. Just it's unreal how fast it can happen. And just, you know, I get not everyone will have had the experience, but just if you've ever like been about to swim on like a beach or something, and you dip your toe in, and it's like really, really cold, and just immediately you feel like, you know, your body, like it's, you know, your lizard brain immediately goes, don't do that, that's dangerous. You know, imagine if you can't, you know, pull your toe back. Imagine you do go into the water. Just, yeah. And you know, I'm sorry, I don't know the title, but I don't know, I'm going to call him second in command. He's like, at the cost of how many more lives? As many as it takes. You know, yeah. And just immediately we haven't even met Victor yet, but immediately that of the themes is set up. You know, the obsession with discovery, with reaching some kind of, with learning something, finding something that no one else has before, and being willing to sacrifice people, you know, for that. And I mean, really, in a way, like Victor himself, he didn't think about that it could be really dangerous, but ultimately, and you know, the thing he hopes to do is, at least, you know, it's going to save people. It's going to, I mean, he says that he wants to conquer death. He wants to make sure no one has to die. I mean, ultimately, what he wants to do is prevent that he doesn't want anyone else to ever have to face the pain of the death of a loved one. That's basically, you know, and yeah, you can really, but you know, the ship's captain, I mean, yeah, he, you know, what he seeks could help people, but he's willing to sacrifice all these sailors, you know, just for that. It is, yeah, you know, in some ways he is much more extreme than Victor, which makes it so much more makes it so much more compelling that at the end, after realizing that Victor was telling the truth, that the story he told him was completely true, he realizes he shouldn't sacrifice these people and that it's not worth it. So he goes back. So even his extreme mind, and in a much shorter space of time than Victor's, you know, he can still redeem himself. He can still show that he cares about his fellow human being and their life. You know, he says lives come and go, but this will be, yeah. Oh, yeah, I did actually know. Yeah, coming up. And in a few quick cuts, we see how deadly Adam is, although we don't yet know it's him, as he kills the dogs. You know, it's already the dogs freak out. You know, they can smell something and they do not like it. And just, they run with such intensity that they rip the thing off the, they were tethered to the boat. They weren't supposed to be able to get away. I mean, obviously, the sailors don't want the dogs getting away. That's kind of, but they do, and they get to him, and just these really, I think we just see him, it's like 3 quick cuts, but we never see the dogs again, so he must have killed, I think there were like 6 or something, and with such ease. I mean, again, think of if ever, I was once, there was this, I think it was like a birthday party or something, and I was like 10 years old or something, and there was this tiny little dog, and yeah, there's something that it did not like. So, and I remember it was like chewing at my socks, and just I mean I didn't try to fight it off. I just tried to run away, and I think I stepped onto something to get up above it, but it managed to get up there as well. Just the sheer, I mean, it didn't hurt me. I'm almost 100% certain that nothing it did actually physically hurt me, but it's been a while, so I don't remember for sure. Just that, and that was a tiny little thing. That was like a chihuahua maybe or something. And then, these sled dogs, I mean, was like, it's not, I can't remember the breed. I almost said brand. But yeah, it's fairly big, yeah, maybe like the about the size of a German Shepherd, and at least as, potentially aggressive, if that's what it's going for. And these 6 all attack him, and he just with ease, yeah. Lives come and go. If we succeed, everyone will know our names forever. I will be hailed as the benefactor of mankind. You're wrong. I know better than anyone. Who are you? My name is Victor Frankenstein. I love the delivery. Just in general, I love this movie. I love the acting, the cinematography, the music, the casting, the editing, the pacing, everything about this movie. It's pitch perfect. It's not for everyone, and not everyone, I don't mind that there are people who don't like it, and I'm not going to say that, they just don't get it, but just, yeah, I mean, if you're watching this video, kind of the idea here is that you already did watch it, because I'm giving away everything. But if you're watching it despite that, or if you're watching and you don't, and you're like, oh, the movie's okay, but, yeah, I'd like to be able to, by the end of this, convince you that it's absolutely amazing, and we'll see if I succeed. But just, yeah, I've owned this on VHS for a lot of years, which I'm very happy about, because that's, I've been able to watch it over and over. I think if you have the physical space for it, and you're the kind of person who likes watching movies, I think having a substantial collection of DVDs, and if you still have a VCR, I might be the only one, VHS tapes, that is severely underrated. That is one of the best things in the world. And we're already told that the story will span decades. I forget, I think, is it maybe like 97 is when the story ends, and then we go back to like, is it 66 something? I forget, I should have written it down. But yeah, and basically, excuse me, the last thing we see before the, framing device is 1796, I believe. And the moment we meet Victor's mother, immediately we understand why he's so attached to her. Even long after she's dead, it's such. I mean, basically, again, he says he wants to conquer death, but which certainly is something like, it would be a medical breakthrough. So there's that, but basically, he wants to make sure that no one ever has to face the death of a loved one, has to face the pain of the death of a loved one. And yeah, we've just been told by Victor, you have to, let's see, what was the, excuse me, we've just heard him say, you can't, you're wrong to risk other people's lives and to be so obsessed with, the benefactor of mankind. And the very next thing we see is how devoted he is to his mother. So, if you watch this movie and you don't yet know the story, you don't know that he's going to, create Adam, then this is, even then you get why I mean, the mother has very little screen time, but she makes such an impression. So ultimately everything he does for the rest of the movie, not everything, but basically the thing that really starts it is how loving his mother is. And it's even said, I forget if it's Victor's father maybe, but someone says, "You'll spoil the boy." And yeah, it is, and that's also, it's been a really long time since I read the novel, so I don't remember if it's there, but certainly this movie understands that if there is a really close relationship between a parent and their offspring, that then you can't really cope with that. That is ultimately, everybody has dead people. No one, if you manage to go through life with literally no one you love dying from you, you are extremely lucky, and it's probably that you died before they did or something, because that's, and a lot of, and it hurts, but that doesn't mean you can go and do something that is, that's we understand why Victor is willing to go so far. And it's important to, Victor does some really awful things in the name of this experiment. So it's important that we have sympathy for him, or it's basically just going to be hate watching. We're going to think of him as completely reprehensible because of all the things he does, if we don't have a lot of sympathy for him. And at the very start, we know that whatever it was he did, it went wrong, and it's clear that he did something awful. We just don't yet know what. And now, let's see. I guess I should, just briefly, a couple of things that I, considered noting, but didn't some of them I forgot to note. Just briefly, I don't remember exactly how it is in the novel, but when Justine is, lynched and hanged, they even say this is a lynch mob. I thought that was a nice, I think that that's a way to sort of pay tribute to the more, before this one, that was basically what we expected. The old versions of the Frankenstein story, you have the lynch mob and they chase the monster. And that wasn't what they were going to do with Adam in this. So instead, it's Justine that they, that was one thing. And then I wanted to say that one second. Okay, maybe more than one. William. When William, he also, he's a very happy boy, much like Victor was when he was a child. And it's when William dies, Adam even says, when I killed him, I know that's not verbatim, when I did kill him, I saw your face. And that's the, it is as though, when Victor was a little child, his family protected him. But when William is still a little child, Victor creating Adam gets William killed. So his family protected him, and his actions, made put his family in danger. And let's see, there's something else there that I wanted to, and it is also this thing of, the first, if Adam genuinely wanted to, he could have killed the children in the cottage. That would not have been a problem for him to do, but if for example, when the rent collector comes, I think it has a title, but I don't remember. When the rent collector comes, it wouldn't have been difficult for Adam to chase down the girl and kill her if that was what he wanted to do. It's, the IMDb trivia says that the producers were reluctant to show William's on-screen death. Am I watching a different version then? Because there's no on-screen death in the version. I've never seen William's on-screen death. I'm not saying I want to, but just anyway, what it appears to be is that as soon as, it cuts before we see it, but as soon as William starts running away from Adam, presumably Adam gives chase, chases him down, kills him. Because we are told later, yes, he killed him, and he did so, slowly and, seemingly intentionally. He doesn't really seem remorseful. He is sad at the things that happen. He himself, he doesn't, when he talks to the old blind man, he doesn't even really blame other people for mistreating him. He says they do it because I am ugly. He doesn't say, it's their problem, they can't accept me or something. He places the blame on himself. But so in other words, he would easily have been able to chase down the little girl as well, if that was what he wanted to do. And so it is clear that he doesn't have to be evil. He isn't fundamentally evil. The quote about violent, love and violence, he has both in him. But let's see, him killing William is, presumably William would have grown up to be another brilliant man, like his father and his older brother. So he's putting his family in danger, getting his family killed, and he is robbing the world of amazing people. I think Adam is the one who says, "Did you ever stop to consider the consequences of your actions?" And that's the thing. He genuinely didn't. It didn't occur to him that if he created life, that it wouldn't. Yeah, that it would end up hurting him, and he knows that there's some chance that it becomes that his creation becomes extremely strong. He saw the monkey arm, So back to the notes. You must think of her as your own sister. Unless, of course, you are the type to marry your sister. In that case, please don't think of her as your sister. That is something, if I had to say, that is a little awkward. And they keep bringing it back. It's said here at the very start, and then near the, not long before the wedding, it's like, we are no longer, after the wedding, whatever, we are no longer brother and sister, we are husband and wife. And it's just, yeah, but I mean, at the same time, they probably, what his mother means is the treat her with love, and that's the, yeah, it's a way to convey that, and it might be in the original novel, and they didn't want to change it or something. I don't, but it is. Excuse me, and it is maybe also a little uncomfortable, seeing as how the people in the upper class, the royalty and such, indeed used to marry their own family members because they thought that would be better for their bloodline than if they married a commoner, which is just, sometimes, irony is just so incredible. But yeah, he wants the kid to love kid glove. Why is the saying treat someone with kid gloves? I mean, kid gloves would be far too tiny for the hands of adults. Is it a kid glove on each finger, and that makes things more difficult because you can't, I don't know. Or did people used to literally have a separate set of gloves and well, I'm going to deal with my children now. That's this pair, so just, there we go. Yeah, anyway. You will be an even greater doctor than your father. Those words are so bitterly ironic later in the film when, he is extremely gifted and he accomplishes things that others could only dream of, but it's not a, you kind of wish that he hadn't managed to be that he wasn't quite as brilliant as he turns out to be, because he does manage to genuinely cause a lot of harm because of his genius. The birth scene is so dramatic, or as the voice talent got at first, traumatic, which, yeah, that too. I love when the camera rotates all the way around as she's giving birth, just, yeah. And Victor begs God to bring his mother back to life. No one need ever die. I will stop this, I promise. Great early scenes of happiness and family life. The later tragedy and loneliness and despair is in such strong contrast to these early scenes. And even when he goes out seemingly to enjoy the weather with his family, he's still, doing experiments. and he already realizes that electricity can be harnessed as an energy source. How do you feel, Elizabeth? Alive. And yeah, and the father just says, your mother. I'm sorry, your mother was not here to see. And also, just briefly, I do really love when he says, I'm sure you'll grow up to be a doctor who's, an amazing doctor. A field that I myself am not entirely, unfamiliar with or something, And he says, I only wish your mother was still here to see this. And he brings up, but she bought you this book. And he reads, this is the journal of Victor Frankenstein. The rest of the pages are blank, to be filled with the deeds of a noble life. And again, we get that's one of the things I love about this movie. There are so many these kind of foreboding things, that his mother just put that it would be his journal, and his father is certain that the deeds of a noble life. But later when Adam reads it, long before Adam reads it, we realize these are really horrifying things that he put in the book. There's this sense that he's betraying the memory of his mother and the trust of his father. His mother would never have wanted him to do something awful in the name of bringing, of removing death. And and his father obviously trusts that as a doctor, as a physician, he will go out and help people rather than, create life himself in this really, And Elizabeth and Victor together, and she's, kissing him and goes, sister, friend, lover, wife, yes. I'll be here when you return, each holiday, every time you visit each holiday, something like that. Which, again, so many things here early in the movie are it tells you what these people think and what they expect to happen, which heightens the tragedy, which is again something, you could start the movie with him already in the lab, but it wouldn't. It's so much more powerful because of that. Because we see before, during, and after instead of just during and then briefly after. And Victor almost immediately challenges the professor. He says, we must obey the laws of physics, and he says, but what of these philosophical ideas? And, mentions these philosophers that I don't know much of anything about, but he mentions Cornelius Agrippa, who, and the response is what was it? That he was like, I forget, but because of, because I've played many, many times Amnesia, The Dark Descent, I know at least a little bit, I recognize the name, and in that game he's also described as someone who had, occultist, I think is the word the professor uses. I love the introduction of John Cleese's character Waldman in the shadow, and obviously not in agreement with Kempe. The moment that Kempe realizes, he sees that he's there, and there's this brief pause where, again, it would be so easy to, like, if the if Kempe and Waldman agreed, then the moment that Kempe spotted Waldman, Waldman wouldn't be in shadow, and Kempe would smile, and maybe introduce Waldman, but instead is this kind of defiant, clearly he's And I do really love that later I didn't. Not too much later into the film and into my notes. I didn't note this at the time, but again, later Victor is challenging the professor, and he says, that professor agrees with me, and Waldman is like, it's just, and runs out, and Victor leaves, and then Waldman, shows up, I don't know, and just grabs him and, pulls him behind. Just, it's a really strong, this real sense that even though Waldman does in some ways agree with Victor, and obviously Kempe knows that, it is still something that I'm as far as I understand, basically everyone knows that that's how Waldman feels about it. That I could be wrong. That there is this it's still, Waldman still is angry that Victor just blurts that out in front of everyone. And it is this thing of, basically Waldman is, when Victor meets Waldman is where Victor was near the end of the film, except we don't know if he's suffered loss the way that Victor does, but clearly he used to be extremely passionate about this, and now he's much more reserved, and he still has some hope, he still wants to help Victor, but it is this sort of, he tried and he couldn't stand the results of it. And let's see, again, it's foreboding. He tells Victor that yes, he had some success, but that success horrified him, and Victor still won't listen. And that's, that is a thing in some of these, science fiction stories, where it's someone's obsession that led to, it's it's a trope, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. That there are a lot of warnings and they're all ignored. Of course you're not crazy, and what a perfectly natural for someone not crazy to say to a complete stranger. I love, the reading aloud of the letter by Elizabeth. The P.S. I fall in love, and everyone just stops. What? And she reads a couple of more lines, and then we realize, oh, it's a dog. It's a sheepdog. It certainly is good that she read the part about the wedding night to herself before reading it out loud. She was clearly surprised when she read P.S. I've fallen in love, but she does manage to, inside voices for the reading of the next part, which, and there's, so what does it say? Oh, it says he made some new friends. It doesn't take a lot to convince Waldman to let Victor in on his experiments. Again, there is clearly, on some level, he wants him to succeed, even if he feels, he himself can't bring himself to do it again. but he does kind of want it to succeed. You know, if he didn't, he would have, yeah, he you know, Victor doesn't put a gun to his head and force him. Victor says, I know you're right, we can do this. And Waldman agrees. So there is a, yeah. And he introduces some of the ideas. You know, he's the one with who tells Victor about the needles, and that will, Victor might have deduced about the electricity on his own because of the earlier experiment, but the idea of the needles, that is something that Waldman has learned and that he tells Victor. We know that Victor didn't already know when he shows him, because, yeah, Victor doesn't go, oh yeah, I know that already. Also, I do quite like that, this might be in the IMDb trivia as well, I forget, but when he's about to do an experiment that it involves, catching lightning, using lightning, using electricity, earlier in the film, he doesn't use the kite, but Elizabeth is running around with a kite, yeah, pretty sure you know who I'm referring to. Very intense when Henry's hand is gripped tightly by the detached monkey's arm when it's electrified. And, again, we have this thing where, Victor, he can see, okay, too much electricity. The Henry says, nothing is this, is this strong, or something like that, which is an interesting, I guess he wouldn't necessarily know. I mean, pretty sure there are living things that are stronger than what that appeared to be, but it's also in service of, it's conveying to the audience that this is incredibly strong. But Victor manages to free Henry from the arm, but he does later go on to create Adam, who is as strong as that monkey's arm, and as it's a, what's the term? It's another warning not heeded. You would think that would make him go, okay, this is, maybe we shouldn't use electricity. It makes the subject so intensely strong. And Waldman is administering the vaccine, and unfortunately, was in like the sharp-featured man, something like that. The other character Robert De Niro plays is an anti-vaxxer, and he stabs Waldman, and we have Victor in despair, not being able to save Waldman. And right before being hanged, Waldman's murderer says, God will punish the doctors for what they do. Both warning at what happens later, and probably also helping to explain why Adam is so ready to hurt doctors and their families. He kills Victor's father, who's a doctor, and he's willing to hurt all the loved ones of Victor, and Victor's a doctor. So yeah. And Elizabeth reveals Victor hasn't written in months, and Justine convinces Elizabeth that she must go see Victor. I think I might have noted this further down, but I do really feel like they do a great job on Justine. She doesn't have that many, she doesn't have that much screen time, that much dialogue. She isn't talked about all that often, but we remember her. I mean, this is a character, if you had asked me, again, just a couple of years ago I watched this again, but Other than that, I think there's a chance it was maybe 10 years before, since I last watched it. If you had asked me, a full decade after I last watched it, who is Justine? I would have immediately been able to, outline everything that happens with her, because it's so compelling, and her death is so tragic. She exhausts herself looking for William and falls asleep in this barn, and then Adam drops the locket by her. And when people find, when the mob, or when they realize, when she is found, it is assumed that she killed William and stole the locket. And just the moments leading up to her death, when they desperately try to get to her so they can get to her before they hang her, and it's impossible. They do everything they can, and it's just they cannot get there. And just and again, I mean, that's imagine that someone you love that much and that you can trust dies and is killed because they were assumed to have, the people who found Justine and saw the locket, they didn't know Justine well enough to know, because these were, other people. If anybody who worked directly with the family, they would know Justine would never do that. There's a misunderstanding. Something else has happened here. It can't possibly be that. But she's not found by them. She's found by these other, raw materials. That's all they are. Tissue to be reused. And we see him cutting body parts off dead bodies. A number of the times that we see limbs cut off and the like, we only actually see him, start to cut off the limb. We don't see him. We don't see it cut off, and we don't see like the blade cutting it off. We see the thing, and then it goes out of shot. It's similar to the chainsaw scene of Scarface. It's still incredibly effective because the suggestion is so strong. And I mean, I've seen movies that are infinitely gorier than this, that are much less effective. And Victor reanimates the dead frog, but leaves before he sees that it's become incredibly strong. Again, we have this very clear warning that what he's doing is just too dangerous. This is not something that he should be, meddling in. And, Henry is outside and trying to talk Victor into leaving, because, the epidemic, and they're going to come and they're going to find him doing these things. And, he ends up just, yelling, "Goodbye, Henry." And Elizabeth, "Victor, it's me, Elizabeth." And for like a fraction of a second, Victor's like, "Holy crap, Henry's an amazing ventriloquist." I mean, that would be as, that would make as much sense as Elizabeth showing up as this epidemic is, And Elizabeth presents a set of fresh eyes on what Victor looks like, what he behaves like, what his laboratory looks like. The audience has been so close to him for a while, and we may have almost started to forget how different he used to be, how much sunlight and nature was in his... I mean, he was always studying very intensely, but at least he'd go outside if he thought that there would be lightning and he could conduct an experiment. He danced with Elizabeth, he had fun, but now he doesn't even write to her anymore. and he's in this nasty laboratory. His clothes are a mess, and just, yeah. Again, it's incredibly important that we see how he is before the experiment, because he becomes a different person, and that is also something, very few people actually try to reanimate the dead, but there are a lot of people who can become obsessed and forget to go outside and to interact with other people and such. I love the entire sequence of him bringing Adam to life. So much detail, so many different scientific ideas working in conjunction with each other. I didn't note any of it, but just briefly, you've got the amniotic fluid, you've got the heating up of the fluid, you've got the electricity conducted, including through the electric eels, you've got the needles inserted in very specific places, and and he really, again, I basically don't really understand. I don't understand how you can watch that scene and you're not like, this is amazing. This is so. I guess if you think a bunch of the other stuff isn't good, but just, I don't know. But he's got he's got the body lying on the thing, and it has to he's got this like, what's it called, like train tracks kind of thing, that it's and down, and the lid on top, and in with the needles, and all this stuff. Just, I guess maybe part of it is, when I first watched this movie, I was a teenager, and a lot of the movies that I liked back then were these really incredibly fast-paced and just a ton of detail, and violent and scary kind of thing. And if you watch this and you're no longer, if the first time you watch this movie you're not a teenager, I guess maybe it doesn't make that same impression. I don't know. I can't imagine not loving this movie. And and Victor, he sees the eyes, but he does become convinced that Adam isn't alive, and leaves frustrated. But then first it's just the hand. It's like, goes from to this, and then he starts moving in the tank, trying to get out, which Victor later says, oh, he's monstrous. If you woke up and you were like underwater and you did not know where you were, you would probably also be trying desperately to get out of there, that is something we don't know, if he can breathe underwater. We know he can't die from hanging, and let's see, he can swim in intensely cold water. Yeah, we never actually see if he can, like, if he's drown proof, but that's another thing. Just briefly, one of the first things we see in the movie is this one guy drowning in this ice water. Immediately at that, the captain should say, I don't want to lose any more men. I don't want anybody else to drown in ice water, so we're going back, but he pushes on. And Adam accidentally gets hanged by some of Victor's equipment, and Victor is certain that Adam is dead. And he writes this very harshly worded conclusion. See, if you write something in your journal about other people, you better be sure that if it's something that they're not going to like reading, you know, keep that journal away from them, or don't write something like that in the first place. But yeah. Now, Adam reads it later because he escapes wearing Victor's coat, which is where Victor placed the journal. And yeah, we realize that Adam is still alive. He cannot be killed by hanging. And Adam rushes towards Victor, who mistakes that for violence, when really Adam is just confused. There's no sign that he's trying to do anything violent to Victor. But you can also understand Victor's, you know, if something big and strong comes at you really quickly like that, you know, you wouldn't expect, you know, if it's someone who's not going to hurt you, you wouldn't expect them to run after you. You wouldn't expect them to, I mean, he does basically chase him, you know, yeah, and he doesn't say anything, you know, if you're walking towards someone and you can tell that they're kind of scared of you, you know, something you might do is stop, slow down, and or say something to help, you know, yeah, so that they know that you're not going to hurt them. You know, that it distinguishes it from like a predator. You know, a predator, I'm not talking about the space alien predator, because those do talk to you. But yeah, you know, a normal predator is going to, you know, it's not going to speak English to you. So that's, you know, which of course, depending on, I'm pretty sure like, you know, Nazis were probably not too crazy about, just, you know, if they heard somebody speak English, it was probably the enemy. Although today Nazis do speak English. And yeah, and various people see Adam's face and they assume that he's spreading the cholera infection. And he overturns a cart and throws several people like several meters into the air to defend himself. And he gets out of town by hiding on a pile of dead people on a cart, taking them out. And Victor, you know, wakes up and Henry's there and he says, I feared it was cholera. Turned out to be pneumonia. Your pet scorpion pneumonia that lives in your boot. Shot you point blank. And then, you know, Henry's like, that's my shift over, and just walks away. And, you know, Victor's like, so you're just gonna leave me here? Oh, great. That's exactly how you should deal with your patients. Just leave them behind to... Is that piano playing? Elizabeth! You're right, Henry. You have other things to do. Never mind me. And Victor assures Elizabeth it's dead, you know, whatever he was working on, as she puts it. He's put Adam behind him and he's ready to return to his old life. And for a while he'll be allowed to do so, but then Adam will come back for him. When you put life into the world is your responsibility. And Adam eats with the pigs and they're fairly content as long as they can get to the food as well. And Adam finds the journal, but doesn't do anything with it for now. At this point, he can't read, as we later, you know, we can maybe guess that that's it, but later we'll realize for sure that, you know. And Adam sees the couple kissing and clearly himself misses intimacy. And Adam does the harvesting since he's the only one strong enough to do it and wants to help them simply because he realizes they need help. This is not some kind of quid pro quo thing. They haven't done anything for him, not that they could, and he doesn't expect them to do anything in return. He just sees people who need help and he helps them. You know, that's part of what makes this story so great and why I love this movie and am not that passionate about other versions of the story. It's so clear, and that was also something that's in the book. It's completely clear Adam could very easily be a great help. He could, he could help a lot of people. In case you're watching this part of the video and you haven't watched the movie in a while, so you don't remember why it needs to be Adam, doing the, what's it called, gathering the stuff. The father and both, the couple, they do try, but the ground is frozen. They're not going to be able to dig these things out themselves, and because of that, they won't have enough to pay the rent. Also, briefly, I absolutely love the thing of, like, just we see the little girl's face, and she's like, "Are you the good spirit of the forest?" And like for a second, we think, is she looking at Adam? And then cuts, and it's the rent collector, and he's like, "Hardly." Now but yeah, Adam could be, a real gift to mankind, but because because people in general have such trouble accepting people that they think look ugly, that they think don't belong, instead he becomes a source of violence. And you could almost say, that's essentially that's mankind. That's what it's like. If you accept someone and treat them well, if everybody treats an individual well, then he grows up to be a happy person who helps others. And if he's treated poorly, he instead, I'm not saying that all of them become like, genuinely, like, physically violent, but there's also, if you grow up without empathy, there's some chance you might become a Republican. But that was, I think the foreword to the at least the version of the novel. I'm not entirely. It wasn't like the original foreword. It was foreword written much more recently, but it was like, the monster, in quotes, is the most human character in here, whereas the supposed people can sometimes show very little sympathy for others. And the grandfather believes that it's the spirit of the forest who helped them, while the father is somewhat more cynical. And the father is essentially like, whoever did this for us is going to want something in return. I want to know who it is so that we can deal with that. He doesn't like owing other people anything. And Adam learns language as the daughter of the family living there does. And the first word he learns is friend, which is, again, a reference to other film versions. I'm just briefly going to say here, it's been a long time since I last watched House of Frankenstein. I believe it's from 1997, miniseries. But last time I enjoyed the crap out of it. And if you have a chance to watch it, I personally would say go for it. It's Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman. Yeah, those are the three in a modern setting, and it's this, and it literally is some people trying to find Frankenstein's creature and bring it back. And yeah, there's, that's always the version. When I hear a Frankenstein creature say the word friend, that's the thing I think of, because I think it was the first thing I watched where a Frankenstein creature used the word friend. And yeah, and it's also a blind guy, but it's really, really great. I think he's called Armando, and yeah, he's really, really great. And it's just, Nah, I'm not gonna spoil it. If I find a version, if I find a copy of it anywhere, I will do video on it. There's no way I won't do a video on it. I just haven't been able to. And yeah, it's got Adrian Pasdar as like a cop, and and that was also the first place I saw him. So when I saw Heroes, it was very different to him in such a different role. But yeah. And Victor has proposed to Elizabeth, and Henry agrees to come back with Victor and help, and write that in your journal. And we get this look from Victor, yeah. And Adam starts reading the journal, now having learned language. And the family leaves things out for the good spirit of the forest. And, on some level, Adam, just it's such a strong scene. And it, like if someone was like, this movie's getting too long. I mean, we can trim that part out, and it would lose so much. Just he's so moved at having been able to help people, and he didn't expect them to reward him. If he wanted a reward, he wouldn't have put just left it there to, he would have like knocked on the door and gone up and said, brought this stuff for you. I thought, I overheard you saying you needed it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I expect some kind of reward. And, the rent collector, again, immediately, first it's the joke of like, hardly. I'm looking for a father, or something like that. And then he, like, he's happy to hurt a child, hurt a blind man, and then Adam immediately takes care of him, which, if they had made like this kind of, I mean, I guess, there are stories like that, but if there are probably adaptations of Frankenstein where he is just like a vigilante, but just the idea of like him like traveling from town to town, a la the Hulk TV show or something, and he's like, maybe he has to hide for a while or something, but someone shows up at the door and is like, you owe me money, and Adam just shows up, and I'd like that a lot. And the blind man invites Adam in, realizing that he is who he has known about for a while. But Adam realizes that his appearance scares people, but he's relieved that the blind man does not fear him. And, neither of them realize that the daughter is running over, to get... They both think that it's going to be fine for them. And, and then we see the daughter run up to the father saying, he hurt Grandpa. The father thinks, when he sees Adam, he thinks he's the one, rather than the rent collector being the one who hurt Grandpa. De Niro does an amazing job at Adam starting to talk. This kind of just the, he apparently he studied like stroke, how like when you like emergent ability to speak, something like that. It feels so natural. I mean, we've seen, this is somewhere where the movie could immediately become laughable, because we've heard Frankenstein's creature talk, and normally he doesn't sound particularly intelligent. So this would be, the movie has done so much to try to avoid us thinking of the older movies. But it works. It really, the way he, And, the blind man, crap, I'm already starting to forget. Did he get to see Adam's face with his hand, or did the father show up before he had time to? And it's also, it's a very different situation from other movies where there's also, a blind man accepts Frankenstein for a while, or Adam. I am with Linkara on the, you shouldn't call him, people say, you shouldn't call him Frankenstein because Frankenstein's the doctor, not the monster. And Linkara, I don't know, it's possible he's changed his position. I haven't watched him for a while, but at least once said he creates the monster, so in a way, Victor is like his father, so of course he would have the same last name as his father. And let's see. Yeah, and he, Adam gets chased out, and then, he goes back in, but, they've already left, and he reads the last part of the journal, and is, of course, that is something really horrifying to read about yourself, and it explains it. Now he knows why he looks the way he does, and he knows how little, both in amount and how much how well he thinks of him, how well or ill he thinks of him, his own creator thinks of him. And the journal does indeed open with, "This is the journal of Victor Frankenstein of Geneva." He's got the full name, he's got the place. At that point, it's not, it's not like he just lives in some subtle little, no. They've got this huge house. I'm not sure it's ever really, we don't know for absolute sure, but basically, let's, hypothetically, Adam, like, he puts like a, what's it called, like a hood over his face, and goes up to someone, in Geneva, asking, "Do you know where where Victor Frankenstein lives?" And he's going to get some help and directions. So as long as they don't see his face and freak out, or his scars in general, it's not only his face. And he sets fire to the cottage and returns for revenge. And we see he walks the distance on foot in deep snow. It's just, and later on we see him swimming like for maybe a full minute total in this icy water. Just in general, he really is almost like, it takes a lot to hurt him physically. It seems almost impossible to hurt him physically. And they return to the Frankenstein estate, and it seems like there might be a return to the happiness that the family felt at the start of the film, which is, again, it would be so easy for Victor only, when Victor returns, someone's already dead there. But no, instead, he gets back and everyone seems happy, and it is this, like, he can't escape Adam, literally and figuratively. He cannot outrun what he did. And it just, earlier on, before he did it, things were happy. Even after his mother died, there was still a lot of happiness in the, at the estate and in the family. But now that he returns, it seems like it might, but it very quickly, we very quickly see that it's not. They are not going to be happy and at peace again. He brought it back with him. He couldn't leave behind what he did, He tried to, but that's not his decision to make. And when he returns, yeah, horrible things. Now, yeah, here's yeah, I did know. The movie does a really great job of making Justine significant. She doesn't have that much screen time, but you remember her and sympathize with her every step of the way. And William is scared by the appearance of Adam and drops the locket, which Adam picks up. They all search for William. Justine falls asleep in the barn, and Adam puts the locket on her. I don't know with absolute certainty. I mean, he does. I'm not 100% certain if Adam puts the locket on Justine like that because he wants them to have it back, or because he knows that when she's found with it, it'll mean, people will assume that she killed William. I mean, I guess it must be the latter, because he does confront Victor. So it's not as though he can't just confront Victor and say, you forgot this. So the fact that he does, yeah, then it must be. He knew, he's smart enough to realize that if she's found asleep with the locket on her, people will assume that she killed William, took the locket from him, and then ran away to hide and fell asleep. And Elizabeth found William and carries his body back to them. I mean, I guess, yeah, if you're not sold on the movie, maybe you think it's over dramatic, because there are a lot of scenes of just this really dramatic stuff, but I find that it works. And Mrs. Morris says, she didn't mean for Justine to be upset. It just, she didn't, and she's really worried about her. And Victor says, we'll do another search, but the townspeople hang Justine before the Frankenstein family and others can help and can stop them from doing so. And Adam grabs Victor from behind and tells him he will meet him at the Sea of Ice. Over there, the Sea of Ice. And Victor realizes how intelligent Adam is. You gave me these emotions, but you didn't tell me how to use them. Now 2 people are dead because of us. As again, he doesn't say that's entirely your fault. He says because of us. And he, you gave me these emotions but did not teach me how to use them. And it is this, he understands that both of them are partially to blame, and both of them could have prevented what happened. He doesn't try to talk his way out of his own guilt. And he asks for a female companion like him so she won't hate him. And Victor asks for 1 month, but he can't tell them that it's to create a creature like Adam but female. And he says I promise to Elizabeth, and she points out all the promises Victor has broken. And it's this thing of just at the start of the movie, these 2 people, there's nothing they wouldn't do for the other. But now Victor, he actually says, let me go back to that. Let me do that thing that, that was obviously awful. She doesn't know the details, but she does know that it was awful. He said, I did something awful, but it's dead now. We can move on. Yeah, he actually is going to create another, yeah. And but by this point in the movie, he's broken all these promises that he made to her, and she rightly points it out. That's another thing I really love. There's so many movies like this, excuse me, where the women don't have strong, don't get to be strong characters. Meanwhile, here you've got Justine, you've got Elizabeth. We don't spend a lot of time with Victor's mother, but she is a strong, she speaks her mind, and she has a very active, she does, when she sees that her child is very serious and spends a lot of time studying, she doesn't just say, whatever, he can, if that's what he wants to do. And she also doesn't try to yank him away from it. She says, you're going to be a brilliant doctor, but you also have to, before, what is, life isn't only about study, I think is her line, And, I mean, Mrs. Moritz, even her, really, such strong characters. I love the intercutting of Victor preparing to make another creature, with Henry and Elizabeth sad because of Victor, and Elizabeth covers the wedding dress to be with, not yet been used, in this black cloth, and she wears a black dress herself and tries to leave, and Adam wants Victor to use Justine, and he says, raw material, just parts to be reused. Those were your words, And Victor refuses, and Adam says, if you deny me my wedding night, I will be there at yours. And Elizabeth is just about to leave, and he says, please, I forget the exact words, but it's something like, Elizabeth, please listen, something like that. And she does. She stops, she turns, and she listens before leaving. And Victor starts to admit the truth, because there is still some, it's just, on some level, she does love him still. And he's, on some level, both of them consider him and their relationship to be redeemable, even after all that it's gone through. Tomorrow, tell me everything, but you must tell me the truth. And Elizabeth and Victor get married, and the people working for Frankenstein's family prepare to kill Adam. And we see Adam up in the, up on one of the upper floors of the estate. And we see Victor's father lying there, and it's completely clear, he's dead. He killed him. Adam killed Victor's father. Otherwise, he wouldn't be lying so still with his eyes open. If he was lying very still but with his eyes closed, maybe he's sleeping, but no. Eyes open, dead stare, because hence dead. It's a very, and Adam just walks over and just closes the eyelids very, we don't know exactly what he did to kill Victor's father, and it may not have been one of the more violent ones, but even so, he's so, there's almost like he's not violent in closing the eyes. And Victor and Elizabeth won't be able to sail until the morning, which is of course too late. And and this is one of those things where, like, I realized that there are people who would say, well, then the Adam's plan wasn't perfect, because basically, if Adam followed them, he might not be able to ride a horse, but he is incredibly, there's some chance that he would have been able to catch up to them. I mean, otherwise, they basically have to spend the rest of their life running. Adam did make his way. I didn't look it up, and I don't know offhand, but Ingolstadt to Geneva, I mean, I'm guessing they're fairly far. They must, if they're like basically neighbors, then why would Kempe keep pointing out, oh, Geneva? He, like, before he knows the Frankensteins from Geneva, he mentions, those philosophers you mentioned, they're from Geneva. If he, today when you hear, oh, it's Geneva, Geneva Convention, good thing, but although wait, Geneva, is that Switzerland? So, they were, they're said to have been neutral in the World Wars, but for World War II, Nazis were able to sell the Nazi gold, which was of course taken from Jews, and at that point you're no longer neutral. You're not helping in a violent way, but you are helping people who, it's not, yeah. So maybe that's what he means. Yeah, anyway. I chuckle because I realize obviously that's not what he means. It's not that Kempe says, in like 150 years, there's going to be some really bad stuff that happens in Switzerland. Obviously it's some other, but yeah, if Ingolstadt was in Switzerland, then he wouldn't be saying, ah, frickin' Swiss. The frickin' Swiss. The frickin' Swiss sounds like some kind of, I don't know. It sounds, yeah. And Victor goes up to join Elizabeth. After all, a man doesn't have, so many wedding nights. And Elizabeth says, brother and sister no more. Well, with that said, you didn't share a last name until now. And Victor and Elizabeth are about to make love, but then Victor hears the flute playing and realizes it's Adam. And Adam, I love the cutting, Elizabeth kind of, she's sitting up on the bed and she leans back and her head hits the pillow and she's looking up and, suddenly, and Adam is like lying there on top of it and she's like, oh no, and then, hand covering her mouth, just, yeah. And some of the lines from this are going to be I'm going to quote later. And Adam rips the heart from Elizabeth's chest and escapes, and Henry realizes that Victor is going to reanimate Elizabeth, and said, your father is dead, so then I have nothing more to lose except your soul. I love that although we are seeing some of the same things happen in the reanimation sequence of Elizabeth, it plays so differently than from when he reanimated Adam. Before, it was an obsessive quest to create life to conquer death, and now it's this mad last-ditch hope to save the life of his beloved. It's a completely different, yeah. And it is, I mean, he created Adam because he couldn't save his mother's life, and now Adam took Elizabeth from him, who he's known, for all these years, and it's kind of a. They say that when you go out for revenge, you dig a grave for yourself and for the person that you for the person you're gonna kill as revenge, as well as yourself. And this is not quite the same thing, because he's trying to create life rather than take it away, but nevertheless. And and reanimation, and Victor cries, "Live!" and Henry cries, "No!" And Victor puts the reanimated Elizabeth in her wedding dress and puts the wedding ring back on her finger, and he needs her to say his name, and I have to say, just great job making both Adam and the reanimated Elizabeth look genuinely horrifying, and just the scars across their faces are really, I mean, Elizabeth, one of her eyes is practically sewn shut from the sewn up scar. That really is, it's genuinely horrifying looking. And Victor dances with the reanimated Elizabeth, and we hear the music playing, and it increases in intensity, and sort of the whole thing is grotesque, but it doesn't stay at the same kind of level the whole time. How many times have we seen these two dance in this movie, and all the other times it was such a happy occasion, but now, first it's just the dress and and they hold, and they stand the way the whatever it's called when you're doing that dance, you put hand on the thing, whatever. I'm not a dancer, thankfully. If I ever dance, you'll know that I've been replaced by some sort of like Skrull or Terminator, something. Anyway, won't dance, don't ask me. What's the right? Elizabeth, first they dance, and it kind of, the music starts playing and gradually gets louder, and it is this, it's like if it's a sort of perversion, it's a grotesque version, imitation of what we saw earlier. What we saw earlier was so natural, but now it's this really it's clearly wrong, just wrong, morally wrong. And that again is why it's so important to see all the dancing, all the happiness before, And Elizabeth starts to move towards Adam. She recognizes something in him, something the reanimation does to, it did it to Adam, and it's done it to Elizabeth, and she does keep turning to face Victor, but she continues to move towards Adam. And when she examines his face and scars closely, she realizes that she herself has scars, and there's this, neither Adam nor Elizabeth have, they're both horrified when they realize how different they are from, those who have not been reanimated. But with, in this scene, it's let me think. Despite, earlier in the movie, we could, Adam could show a lot of empathy for others. Although, I guess, we haven't really seen that since the family when he was chased out of the cottage by the family, the father of that family, since then he's basically been without remorse, and he tells Victor he's willing to stop killing people if Victor will give him a mate. But when Adam is facing Elizabeth, he doesn't seem to understand, or maybe just not care, that she is horrified at finding out that she's no longer... I mean, we're not told whose brain it is for Elizabeth, is it? But it's probably Elizabeth's own brain, because he wants Elizabeth back. He wouldn't just use her face. If at all possible, he would also use her brain. So there's some memory of having been... Yeah, I mean, at times Adam can also sound somewhat like Waldman. He's very... Adam sounds very different from the man hanged, the murderer of Waldman. The murderer of Waldman doesn't have a lot of lines, but he's paranoid and has this, like, the hatred for doctors. As I mentioned that it might help explain why he's so willing to, maybe there is some there, but he's more intelligent and well reasoned than the man hanged, the man who has his face, that his head was taken from. But there's a very real chance that Elizabeth, she seems to on some level understand that she didn't used to be like this. Maybe she has some memory of, she died when she died. She had just seen Adam, and for the first time. Where, when Waldman dies, that was before anybody had been reanimated. So when Adam wakes up with Waldman's brain, it's not quite the same thing. But yeah, there's Adam doesn't seem, he doesn't express any sympathy for her. Excuse me. Yeah, she's... It is both, both Adam and Victor, they don't seem to care as much. They just want a mate. Victor wants Elizabeth back, and Adam wants a bride. And neither of them seem to care that much about what she wants. And they just want to... they just want to own her. They want to have her. And Elizabeth says Victor's name, and it's the one thing she says. And I also really love the acting of Helena Bonham Carter, who is not... She doesn't get to use words because her reanimated form isn't able to say a lot of words yet. And she's wearing this makeup that, I mean... Acting is difficult when you're not wearing anything that you're uncomfortable with. But the moment that they put something over her eye that makes it look like it was sewed, try closing one of your eyes, whichever. Try to be careful not to wink with the wrong eye. And just walk just a few feet without opening that eye. See how uncomfortable it is, and she has to convey her frustration, her exasperation with both of them, with the way they're treating her. And she does such an amazing job. It's just, I have to say, when it comes to these stories, she's just so amazing. She's also great in the version of Hamlet where it's Mel Gibson. I want to say the director is Franco Zeffirelli, who's in general just, I really love his work. I haven't watched all of it, but what I've seen I really love. Now, yeah, Victor and Adam fight over the reanimated Elizabeth as if she has no choice in the matter. I have more notes about this sequence in the next section. And Elizabeth sets herself on fire and runs down the hallway, setting fire to the entire building, and returns to the ship, and Victor dies. And I want to say that, let's see. Right, the fact that, we already know that the reanimation it greatly increases their strength. So when she lifts it and just crushes between her hands, it's one thing to light something on fire. She doesn't just take the light take a candle and stick it at herself. No, she crushes it, spreading all the oil, all the flammable oil over herself, and runs down the hallway, spreading the oil further, and just, I've seen a lot of full body burns in movies in my life, and this is one of my absolute most, I don't want to say favorite, because nobody died, but it's still, you couldn't pay me to set myself on, to let someone set me on fire. The most dramatically effective, there's, I don't want to mention too many of the others because I don't want to spoil those movies, so that's what I'm going to stick with. And the captain still doesn't believe Victor, which, you could kind of understand why. And the captain insists they still head north, and the other guy says no, and the ice breaks, and just incredibly, them getting back onto the ship so that they don't fall into the icy water, just again really, really scary. And come with us, and he just responds, I am done with man. Let's see. Did I mention that when I talked about House of Frankenstein? Because that was something that I wanted to mention. They look for Frankenstein's creature, and they do indeed find him in a block of ice in the North Pole. They were like, well, supposedly he went to the North Pole and he froze, and I don't think he's dead because they didn't seem to be able to kill him. I think he's just frozen. And so they bring him back and thaw him, and I'm not going to give away any more than that. Yeah, okay, I've already talked about how he meets a blind guy. There's this really awesome scene. He thaws in this, they try to contain him, of course. So they put him in this big, there's this huge steel door in the way, and they're like, well, again, no, he's gone. Is that before or after they thaw? I forget. I think they might have managed to thaw him, and then they try to check for a pulse maybe or something, and nope, he's dead, so just leave him here. And what they don't realize is, of course, that's and that's also how they get, so there's no, it's not that we see someone create Frankenstein's monster, but they do try to resuscitate Frankenstein's monster, and then no, he's dead, and leave, and then he comes out, and there's a huge door. And at first we just hear, and then, I think we see that indentations of he, slams his fist against the door, And like 3 times, and then the 3rd time the door opens and he stands there and you see the scars, and there's gotta be some way to find a copy. I'm gonna keep looking. I really miss watching that. Anyway. Yeah, they just barely get back to the ship in time, and Adam swims far in icy water, something no regular human being could possibly do. You know, you want to traverse ice-cold water. Okay, there are things, but you can't swim in ice-cold water for more than just a couple of seconds. Very, very briefly only. And certainly, he's not wearing anything that would enable him to swim for longer, like something that would keep your body temperature up or something. And now the captain decides they sail home. Seeing Adam, he realizes that what Victor told him was absolutely true. And he, of course, realizes obsession leads to despair. Now, the movie is 1 hour and 53 minutes long, not counting in credits, and 59 width, which is almost how long I've spent on this one section. So, moving on to notes taken before watching. Now, yeah, I've watched the movie a bunch of times, especially, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, something like that. And I read the book years ago, and I read the book after having watched the movie sometimes. I think I might have already mentioned that, but anyway. And I was really surprised by how close the film stayed to the book. Now, I haven't watched all or even many Frankenstein films. But yeah, you know, this follows the book incredibly closely, way closer than what I hear about the others. This one does it right. Adam speaks and doesn't sound like an opera singer like in 2004's Van Helsing. And, you know, I mean, in that movie he talks, but you just want him to shut up. I don't know how anybody watches that movie and isn't just constantly going, shut up, to every single character who speaks. Now... But yeah, you know, is in general genuinely clearly intelligent. From what I gather in other movies, basically the threat is, you know, here's this really violent creature that might hurt some people, even though, you know, he's slow and not so intelligent. In this, Adam might realistically replace humanity. You know, it's actually something that I think when talking to Waldman maybe, but Victor says, you know, we could create someone superior to mankind, and, you know, then Adam demands a bride. If these two can actually reproduce, I mean, he can't stop even one of these. If they just keep coming, and are we sure any of them will ever die out? I mean, they already died once. Who's to say they're not resurrected permanently? It just, you know, he can't be killed by hanging. He is immune to cold, even being able to swim through, you know, incredibly cold water. Let's see. And there was one other thing, but I'm not entirely certain. But, you know, we don't see him shot, and, well, I guess, yeah, I mean, the fire definitely seems to destroy. Yeah, it's probably that the fire genuinely does destroy Elizabeth's body, the reanimated body, and with nothing left, that she is genuinely dead. But other than that, you know, but yeah, you know, as far as I understand, the other movies do also raise, at least some of them, raise the idea that that Adam could be good. he isn't for sure necessarily going to do evil things. It depends on who he's around, what they teach him, how they treat him. So far, same here. But here it goes beyond that. He makes clear that he will only do something violent if he is denied having someone who loves him. I'm not saying that that position is right, but I'm saying that's how a lot of people feel. If I can't be happy, you can't be safe. And that's, again, you can sympathize with he wants companionship, but that's also incredibly scary. If Adam wasn't created from if Adam wasn't created by sewing together a bunch of dead bodies and reanimating them, if he was just a regular person, well, Adam might grab a gun and commit a mass shooting. There's a sense of entitlement there that's, I understand why he thinks that he won't be able to find someone that would love him normally, but he recognizes that by creating Adam, Victor did something that he probably shouldn't have, and that he did something to Adam, that he did, that he caused harm to Adam. And yet, here he is saying, now do it again. Do it to someone else, because I want something now. Now, it makes a lot of sense to fear Adam and what he can do, but he is also sympathetic. And I would argue that there's no problem in the two existing in the same movie. After all, when watching Batman Begins, when Bruce might kill someone, such as Joe Chill, we are scared, we're worried that he's going to do something awful, while we also have a lot of sympathy for him, for reasons such as his parents dying when he's so young. It's not, I don't know, it's maybe not so common in, Frankenstein is one of what is referred to as the movie monsters, but, protagonists are sometimes granted that level of emotional complexity. I may have already said in the video, but basically, here you have this guy who if he's treated well, he's going to do good things to others, and if not, then not. And that's how a lot of us human beings are. Now, let's see. Adam speaks and says such compelling things, and wait 1 second, something. The thing, it's a continuation of the thing about how the character of Adam here is sympathetic, but also sometimes scary, and De Niro can do that. He can do both of those in the same movie. He does it in this, he does it in Taxi Driver, he does it in numerous others. Here we go. When the bride is fought over and kills herself, neither Victor nor Adam actually ask her what she wants. They just fight over her like they're two 7-year-old boys and she's an action figure they both like. She doesn't want either of them, certainly not if they're going to treat her like an object like that. And you also get the sense that she doesn't want to be alive again. The creature didn't at first, but he ended up feeling that as long as he could have a satisfying existence, that it would be fine. But the creature doesn't have the mind of Elizabeth. They are two different individuals. Elizabeth wakes up, realizes she's alive again, and feels that it is wrong. It was wrong for Victor to raise her from the dead, to try to get her back. And it's wrong for the creature to assume that she will want him. She wasn't asked if she wanted to be alive again. You know, and there's also some, maybe she realizes that Adam is, you know, Victor's fault before Adam kills her. But certainly after reanimation, when both of them are arguing over her, she's put two and two together. Adam killed me because, you know, whatever it was Victor did to him. And Adam thinks that Victor made me so that he could have a bride, but really Victor reanimated me so that he wouldn't have to lose me. And yeah, you know, it is that thing of just, as much as it hurts, there are certain things that are natural and that we have to accept as just part of life. And it's only going to cause more pain the more you try to fight it. Now, you know, that is the thing. If Adam genuinely does have Waldman's brain, Waldman did on some level want, he wouldn't have helped Victor if he didn't on some level want him to succeed. He objects to that. He says, no, we can't. But he does still end up. And I don't think Waldman was in, he didn't want to die when he did. You know, I'm not saying that Elizabeth wanted to die when she did, but once it happened, she, you know, after she's reanimated and she realizes, yeah, she doesn't want to be alive again if this is how it has to be, you know. And yeah, it's such an amazing scene. I really love I love everything that has to do with the reanimated Elizabeth in this. And I'm so glad that they didn't give her that, you know what, maybe in the 30s it looked amazing. Maybe back then they were like, this is the best thing ever. But the you know, that hair where it's got that kind of like gray, whitish, you know, streak. What was that parody? Was maybe the in the original Frankenweenie short that there was a bride dog and it had there it was fine. There it was funny. But just yeah, I'm really glad they didn't go with that. And in general, I mean, most of her hair is gone. You know, it burned off when, which I guess maybe what gives her the idea to use fire again. You know, she realized he got a heart. You know, even though Adam ripped her heart from her rib cage, he was able to get a heart beating in her again. It was maybe Justine's, I would think, but he couldn't do anything about the fire having burnt off some of her hair. So yeah, he can't do anything about fire, so that's what she's going to use. And just, yeah, I think that's what I have to say about that entire. See, again, even if, oh right, I haven't said that yet. Never mind, I'll get to it. Now, I realized the bride couldn't be in the first film for various of the other films due to such things as film lengths. But it's vital to have her in the first iteration. It's such... If this movie... Yeah, let's hypothetically say that after, you know... Yeah, and a quick way to get it. You know, if after killing Elizabeth, Adam then sets fire to the estate, and then we cut back to the boat. You know, there you go. No, then the bride isn't part of it. But, and I realize, you know, the original 1931 one, I think, the very next movie was The Bride of Frankenstein. Excuse me. And as far as I know, in that one he does talk. But it's just, it's such such an important part of the story. You know, that was also something that really, you know, when I read the book, I think I might have actually even been surprised that the bride was, which I'm almost 100% certain. I'm almost 100% certain that that was genuine. That was in the book. That was Mary Shelley writing that. That wasn't, you know, the 1930s horror writers who just wanted to make a sequel. Although I think some of the things that are in the later movies, those are not like what Mary Shelley wrote at all. But anyway, yeah, just it's because at the end of the day, you know, when his mother dies, he wishes that he could bring her back, and then when Elizabeth dies, he can bring her back. And so he does, and he even pretends that it's okay. He puts her in the wedding dress. He puts the ring back on what was literally just like 5 minutes ago a corpse, you know, and he dances with her, and she does, you know, at first he's the one dancing, and she's just, you know, but she does start to dance along with him, and then it becomes completely, you know, then when she realizes, you know, that she's been brought back, you know, I guess it's one of those things where you know kind of wake up and for like just the first little bit, am I even awake, or is this still a dream? Am I still asleep? This is kind of, you know, kind of groggy, or whatever the term is, you know. Just, yeah, you know, one of the first things in the movie is that he loses someone that he wishes would never die. One of the last things that happen is that he brings back to life someone that he also would never have been, you know, if he hadn't at least tried, he wouldn't be able to forgive himself. But he tries, he succeeds. And yeah, it's just, now, I mean, I guess you could maybe make a comparison to something like, there are people who, if they see that there's, you know, that, I realize that the following is going to be somewhat heteronormative, but bear with me, it's an easier way to, there are some guys who, when they see a girl they really like, they're like, I wish she wasn't already with someone. However, I could drive them apart, or I could, you know, create some kind of scenario where they'll be apart, and then she won't be spoken for, and I can be with her, and, you know, they might even succeed. They might even end up with that girl. And some of them realize, and some of them don't, but if it happens like that, if you get to be with someone because you know, got rid of, you know, maybe telling some really awful lies about that other person, or, you know, making it seem like they cheated, something, you know, then when you end up with that girl, that's not, yeah, it's not the right way for it to happen. It's you know, some things you just have to accept. That's the way that happened. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's always going to be fair, but there are just things in life that you can't, yeah. Now you know, this is definitely an operatic film, and I think if the movie was much longer than it is, I would agree with the people who say that it's too fast and too much, as it is, I think it gets right up against that boundary in a good way. It's not overwhelming, in my opinion. And I realize I may have said that earlier in the video, but you know, others say it's overproduced and it's excessively theatrical. I mean, I basically get what they mean, you know, but I really don't agree. I don't think it's too much. I don't know a lot else directed by Branagh. I absolutely love Thor. I hate Sleuth. Watch the 1972 original. If you're going to watch any version of that story, watch the 1972 original. The 2007 remake by Branagh is just horrible. It's such a bad... But I've done videos on that, so... I don't remember The Green Mile, but I do, of course, remember Shawshank Redemption, but I also did just rewatch it just in case, both by the same screenwriter, and I'm going to get into what he said about what Branagh did with his script in the next section. I love all the cast in this and in a lot of their other work. Yeah, I don't mention Helena Bonham Carter, just perfect for this sort of thing. You know, she also in several of the Tim Burton movies that she's in, she's also absolutely perfect. But just, yeah, her performance, she understands exactly how to play it in these kind of, you know, darker stories, and you know, dealing with this sort of idea. I mean, again, the woman let them put makeup on her that makes it appear that part of her face has been sewn. You know, a lot of people just, you know, if you haven't tried having, what's it called, prosthetics applied to your face, it takes some getting used to. It's not something where you just, you know, it's like putting on a pair of shoes or something. No, it's genuinely awkward and uncomfortable until you get used to it, and then it's like, okay, I can live with this. And you know, some people are extremely good at just using that, and it's like, okay, it's fine. You know, the fact that this makes me so uncomfortable, I can use that. That makes sense for the. But she sat in the makeup chair for that, and she uses it. It works. You look at her and you get the sense that, yeah, she genuinely, this is someone who's been stitched together, and she doesn't want to be. She didn't want to be, and yeah. And you know, Kenneth Branagh, Robert De Niro, just absolutely perfect. I haven't seen Branagh act in all that much, but I like him in what I've seen him. Yeah. And for the Thor DVD, he recorded a commentary track. And one of the first things he says in that is, he you know, introduces himself. This is Kenneth Branagh. I directed Thor. The people I work with like to call me Ken. So if you'd like to respond to me during this audio commentary, you can call me Ken. Which I just think is such an amazing, for this guy who directs these big operatic movies, and then it's just like, call me Ken, you know, and this unassuming, soft-spoken, just, yeah, and it's a great commentary track too. Did I mention that already in one of the videos I did on the first Thor movie? Maybe, but yeah, I just love that. That's what he sounds like when he's not like directing, you know, scenes where limbs are cut off, and yeah. Now, I remembered, you know, from reading reviews, I assumed that this really was just extremely gory, but really it's not that. I mean, let's briefly go over the gore. I mean, I guess you could say we only see it very briefly, but yeah, the dogs at the start, there's a little bit of gore, and yeah, we're only told the death of William. Let's see. Yeah, you've got several hangings, but that's that's not gore, but it is violence. I mean, is there much gore other than when Adam rips Elizabeth's heart out? That might be more or less. I mean, other than that, it's just implied. It's implied, limbs being removed, but yeah. Anyway, again, I watched this first when I was a teenager. Back then, the fact that there's this kind of violent stuff, that was something that I liked. But anyway, excuse me, what was I gonna, yeah. Now, Renegade Cut, in his 2015 video on I, Frankenstein, said of this movie that, starring a much more talkative Robert De Niro, but the movie was so bad and so poorly structured that most chose to ignore it, or even forget about it altogether. I love almost everything Renegade Cut does, but this is one of the cases where I do wish that he would go into more detail. Maybe he will in the future. Even if he just tears the movie completely to pieces, I'd like to hear what he would say about it. But I do love that whole video, and that ending, it's kind of a tie. But I disagree with him on the quality of the movie. Now, and basically this is not the slow shuffling Frankenstein. It's not quite, Aaron Eckhart, the action star as Frankenstein, but he does, he is seen to move faster with more agility, jumping and such, than the other versions, which I think they push it the right amount. I could definitely see how it could be. I'm sorry, I don't like how physically adept they made Jason in the remake, 2009 remake, I think it is, of the first three, I think. Friday the 13th movies. I get it. I get that they felt like, but it makes sense. Hunter in the forest, so he's going to be really fast, and he's going to set traps and use bow and arrow. I realize he used a bow and arrow before, but it feels very natural for that version of Jason to use a bow and arrow. But it's just not, no, I'm not a fan. And I do think that they could have pushed it too far in this. Other 90s movies have some incredibly fast moving and like high jumping, far jumping kind of characters, but now what we see of the process for creating Adam makes a lot of sense and was updated for 1990s standards when, rather than the older versions, which had less understanding of physiology. I've already gone over the detail of that in the previous section. So that brings us to IMDb, Wikipedia, and critics' sites. Now, the tomato meter, 39% with an average rating of 5.5 out of 10. 41 reviews and only 16 of them fresh. With the critics' consensus, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is ambitious and visually striking. Agreed. But the overwrought tone, maybe, and lack of scares, what? Make for a tonally inconsistent experience, and the audience score was 49% liked it with an average rating of 3.1 out of 5 with 53,545 user ratings. Lack of scares? I don't even understand. This is one of the scariest movies I've ever watched. I don't even know I wouldn't know where to start. That's just, yeah. Now, let's see. So, I'm going over the Rotten Tomatoes professional critic reviews. I guess this is, Branagh's ambitious, this is from 2009. Branagh's ambitious take succeeds as a cautionary tale about true monstrosity, hubris, and man's inhumanity to man. But one man's operatic style is another man's unintentionally comical excess, and Frankenstein certainly tempts fate. I guess. I've never laughed at the stuff. Thor, I do see some stuff that I do find is too much, but one of the big problems that movie has is that it has to, it needs to establish Thor as this god and Asgard and Jotunheim, but it also has to be not spend too much time away from Earth and human beings, because they, if the movie fully went into that, they were worried that people would feel alienated. This is when they made it. Iron Man was extremely popular, and that's very much about a mortal human being who's very much a human being. He doesn't have superpowers, so the whole thing of, I realize that it's also that, I haven't read a lot of the Ultimates, but I have read Ultimate Thor. I have read the comics where he's like, trapped, and people are like studying him, and they're like, we know he isn't who he says he is, obviously, but and there are like flashbacks to Thor in battle and such, and I realize that that's, when he's confronted with what's his name, I'm sorry, I forget his name, but the shield agent that everybody knew, and whatever. When he confronts Thor in this little room, and he's like, okay, so you can fight, where are you from? I get that that's like how in the comic they're like, well, we don't know, but he's obviously not Thor, so, but it was also in part that they didn't want to, there's a reason. Literally the first thing we see is a couple of just people do, they're essentially doing the Twister thing of like chasing tornadoes, but it's these, space phenomena that affect Earth instead. And, then they spot what, we more or less know, or at least, later find out is Thor. Then it shows this big, operatic, god world and such. And not long after, it's back on Earth, and then it spends a lot of time on Earth. That's one of the big problems with that. But it is also ultimately the Asgard, as you see it in the first Thor movie, does not feel real and inhabitable the way the second and third movies do. So I guess, is this, no, I would say that this feels, Actually, I guess an argument could be made that some of the places feel as just operatic as and too big and not. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I'd say that. And I'm inclined to give it an 8 now. The more you watch it, and he gave it an 8 out of 10 too. The more you watch it, the more you appreciate how Branagh was able to faithfully retell Shelley's novel while still managing to make it fresh and make it relevant. Yeah, and this one guy says, watching the movie work itself into an operatic frenzy, one remains curiously detached. The grand gestures are there, but where's the music? And again, I don't agree. And yeah, I guess I'm just not gonna. I'm not 100% certain if this guy liked it or not. He gave it a 2.5 out of 4. It's Greek tragedy, and when its characters utter invocations to the gods in turn, it manages to feel cheesy in exactly the right way. I mean, it sounds like what I've been saying, so yeah. And this other guy gave it a 4 out of 5. What can I say? I found the bravura and chest thumping intriguing. I don't even feel guilty saying that. An oddly moving father-son love story. Exactly. And this guy said about Kenneth Branagh, he displays neither the technical finesse to handle a big, visually ambitious film. Based on what? What are you talking about? I've seen movies that were directed by people who didn't understand how to fit in effects. This movie does an amazing job of integrating its effects. Yeah. Visceral and energetic screen translation of this literary classic. Exactly. Something more substantial than Hollywood's typical fitfully entertaining fluff. Yeah, this one guy says, yeah, the creature's on target, but the rest of the film is so frantic, so manic, it doesn't pause to be sure its effects are registered. And again, I think it pushes it exactly up. I mean, if you watch this at the end of a really long, busy day and you're stressed and then it's going to be too much. But yeah. Yeah, and this guy says the movie switches unevenly between these different genres. And again, I don't think it's uneven. I think it always works. Enough time is devoted to each, genre kind of, yeah. I guess it's possible it's in one of the full reviews, but otherwise I cannot believe that no one said that no one made like a crack about how, it's like patchwork you know, it's all these bits and pieces of different franchises sewed together or something. And yeah, and that's the reviews. Then there's just a bunch of ratings. It doesn't have very many reviews. It has, yeah, I don't think all 39 are 41 are reviews. I think some of them are just ratings. Now, yeah, so here's some IMDb trivia. Robert De Niro studied stroke victims to get a purchase on speech that is struggling to emerge, and I think he did a brilliant job. And I'm not going to read aloud all of these, you know, they're on IMDb, you can read them for yourself. I'm only going to go into the ones that I had something to say about. Producer Francis Ford Coppola had originally planned to direct this movie as a companion piece to Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992, but eventually stepped back to let Sir Kenneth Branagh direct. Coppola later regretted this decision after several disagreements with Branagh during filming. And I don't know what Francis Ford Coppola's version of this would have looked like, but I'm sorry. Again, a friend of mine and I, we watched this movie a million times. We watched Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992 a million times. I'm sorry, that movie has problems. That is a very uneven movie. I can see how, like, the individual scenes are, like, well directed and filmed well, edited well, but, like, put together, it's a complete mess, which I really don't think this is. Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, I don't think that he would have done as good of a job as Branagh did here. And that pains me to say because he's one of my favorite directors. I recently looked at the top 250, IMDb top 250 movies, and I don't think it's exaggerated that the first two Godfather movies, and notably not the third one, are not only on the list but incredibly high up on the list. They are two of the best movies ever made, without a doubt. I want to say, is it called Jack's Movie Reviews or something like that? Fairly recently did a video on the first Godfather movie, excuse me, and did a really great job analyzing it. Did Renegade Cut also do one at some point? I feel like yeah, I think so, where he talked about the American dream as defined by the movie. Let's see, there's and what was the third one? The war movie that he made. I can't believe I'm having trouble remembering. Yeah, I think the novel was called Heart of Darkness. Apocalypse Now, that's what it's called. Amazing movie. And I'm almost certain that one was also on the top 250. Certainly deserves it. Frank Darabont has said in interviews that he was displeased with the finished movie, feeling that director Sir Kenneth Branagh had mishandled the project. The producers were hesitant about casting John Cleese as Professor Waldman since he was considered a comic actor with the looks to match. To make Cleese appear more serious, they fitted him with a prosthetic chin and teeth that made his looks more sharp and grave. I have never had a problem with this role being serious here. And that again, you know, the friend I watched this with a million times back then, we watched everything Monty Python we could get our hands on a million times over as well. And we never had problems taking Cleese seriously in this. I mean, I suppose it's possible that we would have if not for the makeup, you know, the prosthetics and such, but I don't know. I think he does an amazing job. I think he can pull off drama as well as comedy. Yeah. After viewing a rough cut, producer Francis Ford Coppola insisted on cutting the first half hour of the movie. When director Kenneth Branagh refused, Coppola publicly denounced the movie. And let's see. Sir Kenneth Branagh, apparently, I'm going to call him Ken because I have his express permission to do so. And it's a mouthful to get the whole. I am pleased he's been knighted, I guess it's called, that he is a sir. Ken apparently banned the term monster from the set. He insisted that everyone referred to Robert De Niro's character the way he was identified in the credits, as the sharp-featured man. Which, I mean, does that refer to Adam himself, or to the man that he also plays who murders Waldman? Now, right, here we go. This movie takes place in 1773, 1785, 1788, 93, and 94. So, so when William is born, before we see Ken as adult Victor before William is born. Does that mean that was in 85? So he's only 12 years older than when we saw him is he supposed to be like, well, yeah, I mean, he's going off to college for the first time, so he must be like, yeah, I don't know, a teenager. I don't know how old you were back then but yeah. I mean, on some level, you kind of have to admire. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure how old he was, but wasn't he like 30 when he made this? So he wasn't 15. So let's go with, yeah. And right, Sir Ian Holm had previously played Dr. Victor from Frankenstein, as well as the creature. And yeah, I'm not going to give away where. You can look it up if you want to know. Kate Winslet auditioned for the role of Elizabeth in this movie, and Helena Bonham Carter was selected for the role, but Ken was so impressed by Winslet that he offered her the part of Ophelia in Hamlet, the one he directed and stars in as Hamlet, in 1996, and Carter played Ophelia in Franco Zeffirelli's Hamlet from 1990, which, again, she does an amazing job there as well. Which, I mean, she has to. Yes, everyone knows what happens in. If you don't know what happens in Hamlet, I can't. The play's been out for hundreds of years now. Ophelia has to play some. She has to play some fairly extreme circumstances, and Helena Bonham Carter does a brilliant job. Christopher Lambert was cast as Henry Laurel, but replaced by Tom Hulce before filming. Christopher Lambert. I mean, I guess I can see it, but that would have been so distracting. Was he not known as the king of B-movies in 1990? I guess not. Maybe not. That happened later, but yeah. Let's see. Willem Dafoe was offered the role of Victor. I think he could, yeah. Roman Polanski was approached to direct. I have a feeling his version would have been very different. at one point Tim Burton was being courted to direct. I guess that could have, with Columbia Pictures eyeing Arnold Schwarzenegger as the creature. I love Arnie in a lot of what he's done, but I'm sorry, that is not. But I mean, this was the same decade that he got to play Mr. Freeze, so maybe producers back then just lost their marbles. I don't know. Let's see. Sean Connery was asked to play Professor Waldman. Jacques Depardieu and Andy Garcia were suggestions for the role of the creature. I think, yeah, Depardieu can both carry himself in a very intelligent manner and have this sort of, I don't know if brutish is the right term, but it's certainly fairly animalistic, physical, you know, he can play roles as this very kind of, I think he could have. I don't think I know Andy Garcia from enough. And I guess that's more or less. Okay. Yeah, I'm just briefly gonna be... The creature is reanimated by... Oh, excuse me, actually... Yeah, the lead in here is, this movie contains several references to previous Frankenstein movies, and I'm not sure how many of these I'm gonna read out, but at least just briefly. The creature is reanimated with electrical charges. This is an invention of Hollywood. Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley does not specify in the novel how Victor creates or animates the creature, and I think is it maybe like in the novel he says that he doesn't want to speak of it because he doesn't want anyone to read that and try to use that to, you know, he wants to warn against doing it, so he's not going to provide a manual for how to do it. I completely understand that, and I do think it's compelling to, in creating a novel, keep it, you know, but electricity is very visually compelling. When you see electricity in a movie, that, you know, not all the time, obviously, not when someone flips on a light switch, but when you see like bolts of lightning and like that really gets, you know, again, speaks to the lizard brain. Immediately we're like, okay, this is important. Be careful, do not get near electricity. That's, you know, so using that, yeah, no, just in general, apparently, yeah. I mean, if you don't show anything of bringing the creature to life, there's just no. There's you. It's such a. It's not as though the story is poor for seeing that. You know, there are things that you shouldn't I've never thought that, in Watchmen, we're told that, for example, Rorschach worked for a while. Yeah, Rorschach and Night Owl worked for a while before the events of the main events of the books, Watchmen. I've never thought that we should know very much about that. All that we need to know is in the original books by Alan Moore. I haven't read the prequel ones, and I don't intend to watch the upcoming TV series. There are things where you shouldn't over-explain, but the idea of just like, okay, I mean, it would basically literally be that you see him work on it, and then like the next scene, the creature is just alive. We don't get to see it. That's crazy. There's no way. Now, let's see. Ken did an uncredited rewrite on the script. One of his additions was the scene where the reanimated Elizabeth sets herself on fire. That's one of the best parts of the movie. There's no, yeah. The end version makes it look like Henry Clerval was killed, but deleted scenes show he and the Frankenstein servants survived the fire. Producers were resistant to William's on-screen death. He doesn't die on screen. We see his body after he's dead, but that's not the same thing. Anyway, I do know that for the sympathy of one living being, I would make peace with all. I have love in me the likes of which you can scarcely imagine, and rage the likes of which you would not believe. If I cannot satisfy the one, I will indulge the other. And that's such a... Sorry, my little cheese in there. Oh, and by the way, this IMDb quote section of the video. Yeah, that's such a great... I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to sit down and watch an entire movie about the Frankenstein creature wherein he doesn't speak and he isn't intelligent and he doesn't say that, because that is such an important... And again, I'm almost 100% certain that that is verbatim in the book. So just, yeah, I don't... Why would you even watch any others? What's the point? Don't we have enough shuffling, silent, brain-dead monsters? Frankenstein should be intelligent. Yeah. You gave me these emotions, but you didn't tell me how to use them. Now 2 people are dead because of us. Why? There was something at work in my soul which I do not understand. And what of my soul? Do I have one, or is that a part you left out? Who are you? He never gave me a name. Why do you weep? He was my father. What kind of people is it in which I am compromised? Good people, bad people? Materials, nothing more. You're wrong. Did you know I knew how to play this? From which part of me did this knowledge reside? From this mind, from these hands, from this heart, and reading and speaking, not so much things learned as things remembered. It's like trace waves in the brain perhaps. Did you ever consider the consequences of your actions? You made me and you left me to die. Who am I? You, I don't know. And you think that I am evil. You do speak, yes. I speak and read and think and knows the ways of men. And yeah, I love that Victor, brings this alive and yells, "It's alive! It's alive!" And Krempy in voiceover, "You fool, Victor Frankenstein of Geneva. How could you know what you had unleashed? How was it pieced together? Bits of thieves, bits of murderers, evil stitched to evil, stitched to evil. God help your loved ones." Now, my interpretation is that this is what Krempy believes, hence him, that's part of why he tries to talk Victor out of it, and what Victor believes, yeah, I guess most of the time it's what Victor believes, but it's not that what we, the audience, are to take away from the film. We realize that he has empathy in him, but when Victor runs away from Adam, he's thinking, this is exactly what Krempy would say about what I've just done. He doesn't know the details, so he can't have actually said that. If he had, then he would have had Victor arrested. I don't know all the crimes, but certainly it's very illegal to mess around with dead bodies, so yeah. And but yeah, it's what Krempy obviously believed, and what Victor believes for a lot. Yeah, but we, the audience, do see that he can be a good person. Now, do you share my madness? No, not madness. What then? There is a passage to the North Pole, and I will find it. At the cost of your own life and the lives of your own crew, lives come and go. If we succeed, our names will live on forever. I will be hailed as the benefactor of our species. You're wrong. I of all men know that. I'm here to become a mere doctor. I'm told that has something to do with healing the sick, which is a pity, really, because I find sick people rather revolting. I keep my promises. I'd keep my promises if I were you. Don't bother to scream. And I think this might be the final part. On page 19 out of 26. I'm not entirely sure if it's... Anyway, this is the IMDb fact. Freaking ask questions. And I guess... Let's see... Again, I'm only gonna go into the parts that I have. Let's see. It's still wild that Mary Shelley was 19 years old when she wrote the book. That's... Now... And for those who don't know, apparently her mother did die. I think it was not long after giving birth to her. So similar to how in the book, someone, there it's not the protagonist's, it's not giving birth to the protagonist, but it is the protagonist's mother. And she had this horrible nightmare about someone like with a medical breakthrough, like, was it reanimated, or I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. Right, here's one. Why does the captain change his mind about continuing north? At the beginning of the movie, the captain makes it clear that he wants to reach the North Pole, even at the expense of his crew's lives. Because of the fame it will bring to his name, he wants to be seen as the benefactor of our species. If hearing Frankenstein's story, in which his hope to benefit the whole of mankind resulted in his whole world falling apart around him, the captain began to think twice about continuing on with the madness. And I guess, let's see. I guess I've already basically said that. I find that incredibly compelling because he really was. It was. He would likely have gotten all of his crew killed, and he may well not have even accomplished his goal. Now, yes, so how closely does the movie follow the events in the novel? Viewers who have both read Shelley's novel and seen the movie consider it closer to the novel than most other adaptations, e.g. Universal Studios' Frankenstein in 1931. By and large, it is a relatively faithful adaptation, though the movie still takes a lot of liberties, despite what the title might lead one to assume. In the book, for example, Victor's mother dies not in childbirth, but from scarlet fever. The role of Waldman is greatly expanded in this movie into much more of a mentor figure. It is also worth noting that he is not murdered in the book, and as such, the monster does not possess his brain. The monster, as he appears in this film, also differs greatly from the physical descriptions provided by Shelley. In the book, the cottagers the monster observes are not married, but are actually brother and sister, and learns to speak by listening to Felix teaching his Turkish wife. The movie also admits Victor's travels across the UK as he works on the monster's bride, as well as Clerval's murder at the monster's hand. Arguably the biggest difference is the movie ending. In the novel, Elizabeth Justine is not reanimated, and the monster does not die. I really remembered it as her being reanimated. Maybe the version I read was, like, altered somewhat after the... After the movie came out to more... But I'm almost certain at least a lot of it is the original that she wrote. Anyway, okay, so there goes my argument that it's, it was in the book, so it needs to be in the movie and such. I maintain that it's incredibly important to see that Adam does want something. There is something that he's not just mindlessly committing violence. He's not only seeking revenge. He does genuinely, the first, when he gets to Frankenstein's estate, he kills William and frames Justine so that she's hanged by the lynch mob. And then he confronts, he tells Victor, you gave me these emotions but didn't teach me how to control them. And, and there are other stories where a loner accidentally kills a woman and such. Which, yeah. He doesn't accidentally kill a woman. So anyway, after that, he says, if you give me a bride, I will leave you and the rest of mankind alone. I won't hurt anyone, but you have to give me a bride. And that it changes so much because, and Victor at first even agrees, and then he realizes he would be reanimating Justine, and he's not willing to go that far. He's not willing to do that. Again, it's so much more of that is something that really works about Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula movie. You understand what Dracula wants, and there's and why others really don't want to let him have what he wants. That makes sense, and that's, I'm not saying all monsters and villains have to be sympathetic or have to have a goal, that if they could just have that, but anyway. Right. Is there a main theme to the movie? Stories can have different meanings to different viewers, but the four most commonly mentioned central themes to Frankenstein seem to be the importance of considering the consequences of one's actions, society's inhumanity towards man, the futility of revenge, and the importance of paternal responsibility. There's also the theme of strange individuals longing for the company of alike others. And yeah, I very much see in, yeah, he's somewhat like a father. You can become a father without thinking, you can become a father without really trying to at all. Thankfully, I don't speak from experience. Yeah, just by, you don't have to go around sewing body parts together to become a father, which doesn't mean that it would hurt. But you can become a father just by having unprotected sex. So, but yeah, I definitely do see Adam and Victor as a sort of father-son. Yeah, I think that's a very compelling, because again, he could, when Adam doesn't turn out to be what Victor wanted, he abandons him and is later confronted by Adam, who says, you made me this way and then you didn't teach me how to control what I am. I definitely see the father-son dynamic there. Now, let's see. Right, Wikipedia stuff. Let's see. I'm gonna try not to leave too much dead air as I reread. I've read this several times, but I had the plot synopsis on Wikipedia, but I haven't read it between finishing watching the movie and starting to record this. So I'm just going to briefly, let's see. And Waldman is murdered by a stubborn patient. I mean, I guess that's, it did at least say murdered. It doesn't, but that is an interesting way to phrase it. And let's see. And excuse me. Yeah, this specifies, he's gradually learning to read and speak based on observations and memories from Waldman's brain. And debt collector, that's the term. And see, here it says that Justine is inadvertently framed for the crime by the creature. I don't know. I guess it just seems like if all he means to do is give the locket back, make sure that the locket gets back to its original owner, why not just give it to Victor when he confronts him? I don't know, but it's possible that he didn't realize what would happen. And this specifies that that Adam strangles Victor's father, Baron Frankenstein. That does make sense based on, yeah. And yeah, Elizabeth, horrified by what she has become, commits suicide by setting herself on fire, burning the mansion to the ground. And Victor dies of pneumonia. I had forgotten that he gets pneumonia twice, but only the second time does it kill him. I realized that if it had killed him earlier, then he would have had to be reanimated as well. Now, let's see. Excuse me. Yeah, he takes the torch, burns himself alive with Victor's body. And Walton, having seen the consequences of Victor's obsession, orders the ship to return home. Yeah, I guess that's a pretty good way to put it. Let's see. Yeah, this is the cast listing. Robert De Niro as the creation. Initially kind and innocent, the creation gradually becomes violent and murderous when it realizes that it will never be accepted as human. And that's a really important distinction. Excuse me. It's not, he didn't make a murderer, he made something that no one will accept. And being shunned like that makes a murderer of Adam. Now, Victor, a scientist obsessed with conquering death, which ultimately destroys his family and himself. That's a great phrasing there. And let's see. Yeah, it does name Elizabeth as Victor's adoptive sister, so yeah. She's resurrected following her murder at the hands of the creation, but ends killing herself out of self-loathing. And just briefly, I also want to say I really think it's great that the framing device, it wouldn't be difficult to rewrite to not have that framing device, to just have the it just ultimately it's not the ending of Victor's story, excuse me, it's not so interesting. It's easier to make it work well to have this thing of, a guy who's sailing a ship to the North Pole actually finds a guy who's been traveling just by himself. That tells you how obsessed he is with killing Adam, and the note that, ending on the note that we can learn from Victor's mistakes. We can, obsessions don't have to be humored. You can admit that you've been obsessed and stop risking, yeah. And then there was the other thing of and the fact that the thing with Adam weeping when Victor is dead, and lighting the funeral pyre and staying on the funeral pyre. Yeah. See, Justine is a worker in the Frankenstein household who's close friends with Elizabeth. She's executed after the creation plants William's locket on her after killing him. So this makes it sound more like it is an intentional act. Let's see. And yeah. Yes, so under reception on the Wikipedia page. Frank Darabont, original screenwriter Frank Darabont, later called the film the best script I ever wrote and the worst movie I've ever seen. He elaborated. There's a weird doppelganger effect when I watch the movie. It's kind of like the movie I wrote, but not at all like the movie I wrote. It has no patience for subtlety, it has no patience for the quiet moments, it has no patience, period. It's big and loud and blunt and rephrased by the director at every possible turn. Cumulatively, the effect was a totally different movie. I don't know why Brown needed to make this big, loud film. The material was subtle. Shelley's book was way out there in a lot of ways, but it's also very subtle. I don't know why it had to be this operatic attempt at filmmaking. Shelley's book is not operatic. It whispers at you a lot. The movie was a bad one. That was my Waterloo. That's where I really got my ass kicked most as a screenwriter. Branagh really took the brunt of the blame for that film, which was appropriate. That movie was his vision entirely. If you love that movie, you can throw all your roses at Ken Branagh's feet. If you hated it, throw your spears there too, because that was his movie. Spears at his feet? I mean, I guess throwing spears at him, hitting him, that's kind of harsh, because all he did was make a movie, but yeah. And under critical response, Roger Ebert gave the film 2.5 stars out of 4, writing, I admired the scenes with De Niro's as the creature so much that I'm tempted to give Mary Shelley's Frankenstein a favorable verdict, but it's a near miss. The creature is on target, but the rest of the film is so frantic, so manic, it doesn't pause to be sure its effects are registered. Jet Maslin wrote Reynolds in over his head. Yeah, sorry, this is something the same. Okay, let's see. This is a bland, no-fault Frankenstein of the 90s, short on villainy but loaded with the tragically misunderstood. And I don't know. I'm sorry. I do not agree. Short on villainy. He kills several people in a really brutal fashion, clearly, some of the time very clearly, purely out of revenge. No, I just don't. You and I have very different values, lady. Now, let's see. Yeah, okay, James Byrne, real views. 3 out of 4 stars. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein may not be the definitive version of the 1818 novel. The director likely attempted more than is practical for a 2-hour film, but our ambition is preferable to the alternative, especially if it results, as in this case, in something more substantial than Hollywood's typical, fitfully entertaining fluff. And yeah. I mean, yeah, I could kind of see that, maybe there's too much for one, movie of, what was it, an hour and 53 minutes, not counting the end credits. I don't think, I can see why some people would say it's too much. I don't think it's too much. I think it's the exact right amount. And yeah, again, I'm frustrated by a lot of movies that don't move this fast because, in my opinion, it works. It shouldn't move slower. It shouldn't be less, I don't know, but I mean, if Frank Darabont does at some point, he directs movies, so and this is, I could definitely see how, this is very, very different from something like The Shawshank Redemption, which there is a lot of subtlety in that movie. and that also fits in a lot of plot, a lot of characters, and has a lot of, yeah, you know, I mean, obviously Shawshank is the better film, but I'm sorry, I've watched this way more times than Shawshank, and it's more my kind of movie than Shawshank. Now, but yeah, if at some point, if he decides to show that it can be done right and direct, I don't know if you're allowed to, if it's the exact same script, if you're allowed to just say I'm gonna make another movie based on that exact script, or if he chooses to rewrite it enough. But yeah, if he makes a movie based on the original, based on a very yeah, based on an adaptation of the original novel more so than one of the movies that, you know, I would watch it and do a video on it, and I'm fairly certain this is something that keeps Frank Darabont up at night. So just, you know, now he can rest easily. And yeah, with that said, I don't know. It's possible that I'll at some point watch more of. Again, I've watched Van Helsing. I watched Young Frankenstein, which a lot of it's funny. I don't think I ever have watched the older ones. I definitely haven't watched I, Frankenstein. Honestly, there's some chance I at some point will watch I, Frankenstein just to see, because sometimes I do find movies that bad enjoyable to watch, you know. But I don't. I'm not that interested in watching the 1931 movie. I don't think it's interesting to make a movie monster. Take a movie monster this smart, this eloquent, and turn him into just this dumb, mindless thing. If I wanted to watch something with zombies, I'd watch something with zombies. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not that I mind that there is something that's just mindless and stupid. I love I should say, it's been a long time since I watched them, but the last time I watched them, and I watched them a lot of times, I loved I think it's called the Trilogy of the Dead, George Romero's 3 movies about zombies. Night of the Living Dead from 1968, 1985, I want to say, Dawn of the Dead, sorry, and I don't remember, I guess was it early 90s? Was it just late 80s? Or is that the one that was 1985? I don't remember, but Day of the Dead. You know, all 3, certainly there's amazing stuff in all 3. That I will say without any reservation. But, and I'm not watching that and going like, should be smarter, should be talking about how lonely they are and expressing with just the exact right verbiage. No, but this is the whole point of him creating the danger of what he creates is that it is in so many ways potentially, you know, it is stronger than human beings. It is much harder to kill than human beings. And I mean, some would say that the idea of if you give him, as long as he has at least one individual who will love him, then he's never going to hurt anyone else. That's better than some people. Yeah, you know, he tries to create humanity's replacement, according to himself in this movie, and yeah, he certainly part of the, you know, in some ways he does, and then he realizes how dangerous that is, and yeah, just. But I have nothing against Boris Karloff. I've liked him a lot in some movies. He's in that movie with it's not called Sniper. Sharpshooter, maybe? I forget what it's called, but that's an amazing movie. He's done some other stuff. I'm pretty sure at least some of the Roger Corman I've watched was Boris Karloff. I guess that's basically it. But yeah, I don't know that I'll ever find a version of the story that I like more than this, regardless of medium. So yeah, that's... Now, I have experience with, if I show the cover of a film while it's recording, it's gonna, the autofocus is gonna lose its mind, and it might not reset. Did I ever end up recording a video where it didn't? I think I stopped showing them because I realized that sometimes it doesn't reset, and I was like, an entire video might be out of focus just because I showed the... But this is the end of the video, so there's no worry there. And yeah, I'm just briefly gonna... Let's see if I hold it like this. There. I gotta catch the light the right way. Yeah, I think you can pretty much... I guess... Nope, that's definitely going to catch them. Yeah, I think you can pretty much, you've got the creature on the pulley thing there, and the title, and the... Yeah, excellent cover. And I love this movie, and I'm really glad that VHS tapes last as long as they do, if you just treat them... If you don't... if you watch it over and over and over, it will get worn down. But... And it doesn't seem to have messed up the autofocus at all. But that concludes. So I hope you enjoyed watching, as I enjoyed watching and recording, and I will catch you next time.